I just finished recording a video, which is the one you're watching now, and I just wanted to point out a couple things here. First of all, as I mentioned more than once probably in the video, is that this is just sort of a very impromptu. I mean, I didn't even prepare. I just did it because I've been meaning to do something like this, but I don't have time to really plan it out. But I just record the video and didn't give it much thought other than that. So if you have questions, just let me know. I'm going to try if I've kind of reviewed the video a bit already, and I can see that I wish I would have said this or that or pointed this or that out. So I'm gonna add some annotations to the video on YouTube. So don't turn annotations off is I guess what I'm trying to say there, because I have a tendency to do to just do that automatically every time I look at a YouTube video. But try to keep the annotations on. They're not gonna last for long or anything, so hopefully they don't annoy you too much. But probably will contain info you might want to know. So anyways, hope this video is helpful, and I'll try to be doing some more things here. I have several other ideas for videos, and I just don't have time to do them very well thought out, but I'll try to record them, and maybe they'll be useful to somebody. Okay. So I wanted to do kind of an impromptu discussion on dealing with aerial imagery, pretty much how I use it, how I work with it, and all that stuff. So I get quite a few questions about this stuff, and there's a little bit of variation depending on what you're trying to do as far as how you handle imagery. So I just want to do some just general blab about it. So this should be familiar if you've ever seen my background image video for the taxiway creation series I did. Must have been like 2 or 3 years ago now. So I'm just gonna kind of go over this again. There's kind of some new things at the USGS site here. They kind of give you different maps and stuff. They're all really the same. They're just different interfaces. So like this one is kind of more of a download oriented interface. This one's a little more like oriented at finding data, and this is the old Earth Explorer. These two are the national maps. These are the new download clients, if you want to call them that, and this is the old one. I honestly prefer the old one just because I just find it easier to use. So actually I'm going to use that today, since I didn't use it in my old video from 2 years ago, whenever it was. So I'm just going to pick a random area here. Basically you just map out the area that you want with points, and then you go to data sets, and of course you'll be looking for aerial imagery most of the time. And also sometimes I go down here, I check this one too, because this can provide imagery. I guess these things suggest that there's other possible imagery too, but that's very rare that you'll find anything there. But I'll check them anyways. So nothing really I'm interested in aerial photo mosaics. High resolution ortho imagery, that is the most common thing you'll be looking at. And I believe this is some agricultural program that USGS does, and I've actually been using these these sources quite a bit. So anyways, you can look at this. These I believe are either these are JPEG 2000 format images. So let me see, I know I've downloaded some of the past. See if I can find one or not. I may not be able to find one. The format really shouldn't matter, because what I'm going to show you how to the first I'm going to cover is how to create photo scenery out of these images. So I have this program installed on my computer. It's a free open source program called QGIS. So just kind of a GIS program. And when you install it, there's actually several shortcuts you get in your start menu here if you search QGIS, but the one you want to open is the QGIS desktop, which is kind of the full program here. And of course I've downloaded several images in the past. So I just want to show you how I take one of these, project it, reproject it into the right format with QGIS so that it can be compiled, and I'll show you some certain things you can do, or do about compiling these images and stuff into photoreal BGLs. So first we want to do is reproject the image. I'm going to use this image right here. I want to reproject this into the correct projection so that it can be read by Flight Sim. So I'm going to go up here to raster, choose projections, and choose warp or reproject. So I'm going to select the input file, which is called new2. Alright, now if it's a GeoTIFF or JPEG 2000 image, it should have the metadata in there within the file, and that's why it picks up on this is the kind of the projection ID right here. So it automatically picked up on that. And if it doesn't, I don't think it's necessary to put that in there, just so you know. Now I'm going to select an output file, which is just, like, new to reproject something. I'm going to make sure it's something that I don't already have named here, so I don't accidentally replace something I don't want to. And it's going to be saved as a TIFF file. And I'm going to choose a target projection, so you check this box here. And I'm looking for the WGS84 projection, which is the 43261 here. Alright. And what's interesting, I used to use just GDAL tools and just use the command line to do all this stuff, and it actually gives you the command here in the bottom. So you could theoretically, I guess, use this, copy this, and actually compile it via the command line if you have GDAL installed that way. But of course, this is why I'm using this program, so I don't have to remember these commands. Alright, so this is all set up. Now we just press OK. And this is a small image, so it processes really fast. And you should notice that it's shaped differently now. It's warped from what it was before. And of course it loaded it automatically into the program. So you can actually go ahead and save this. Well, you don't actually have to save it because it output it right here. So it's the same image, just reprojected into the right projection. So now what can I do with this? Well, you can use the resample exe in your SDK, and I've just copied it here so it's easy to use. You can use that to compile these images into photoreal BGLs. So what first thing you have to have though is a kind of like a configuration file to tell Resample how to compile the imagery. So I need to see if I can find the right one, or one that's a good example of an INF file. And I was pretty sure I had one here, but no. If I can find it, I'll show it to you. Here we go. So I've been kind of recompiling some imagery for my Spokane project, and so here's just a quick configuration file right here. And usually what it contains, you got to make sure all the syntax is correct. Spacing doesn't really matter, I don't think. Just the making sure there's no typos, else you're going to have issues. But anyways, there's a source. This just tells that this is the source file and in this case it was something named 1_tile_fix.tif. And so these three parameters are required. I like to keep the layer parameter I use, the variation I always use, null value I use that too. It's kind of something that just prevents some weird things from occurring. I'm not going to belabor everyone with all the details on that, but just point them out. And then these things here are basically the coordinates of the corners of the image. So I believe this is the upper left. I'm pretty sure. Must be the upper left corner by that UL sign there. And where you can get these coordinates, and the reason why we have these coordinates here, or why we're using them, is if you load your image into GIMP, for example, and to edit it or something, or correct or erase cars because it makes the imagery look messy or whatever, well, then you lose all the metadata contained in the image when you export it from GIMP. So Resample needs to know where to position the image in Flight Sim, so you give it these coordinates. And you can find these coordinates on like Earth Explorer here. It'll give you metadata. And here you can find all the coordinates here in either decimal or the other format, which I don't remember what it's called. Anyways, so that's how you get the coordinates if you need to supply those. Now, like I say, if you don't do any, if you don't corrupt the geotiff file, that meaning that there's still metadata contained in the geotiff when you compile it, you don't actually need these lines right here. Although I don't think it hurts to have them in there either way. And then we have the destination, which basically is just the output directory, the file name. Of course, the file type is the BGL, and then these are just some standard settings I use here. Alright, so that's a really basic INF file. I mean, they're all fairly basic, but that's a short one anyways. So once you have created an INF file, I'm actually going to use this one to try and compile the image I just reprojected. So I'm going to navigate, have two windows open here, or maybe I'll just use this one. Since I don't know how I spelled this, make sure I spell it right. I'm just going to copy the name, replace it right here, and output name is fine, but I'm just going to name it something like that so I know it worked. I'm going to save this. These coordinates, we don't need them. It would mess it up anyways because they're the wrong coordinates, and that's because we didn't load into GIMP and do any editing or something and lost the metadata contained in the file, so we're good there. Now all I have to do is go back to that folder. This is the INF I just edited, and I just drag and drop it onto Resample. Now you can do that, except if there's an error. Usually what happens is Resample will just like blink for a second, and then the window will close, and you don't actually see what the error was. So what I like to do is open up command prompt here, and then just run Resample from that. So the reason why I copied the CMD here is that way it opens up in that directory, and if you don't have it located in this directory, well, then you have to navigate to it, which I find a pain to use the change directory thing, and you know, whatever. But anyway, so then you just type Resample here, then type the file name, the full file name. Alright, and then if everything works, it'll compile. And that was it. So that's how you compile your imagery. Now we have the BGL right here, and you just put that into a scenery folder and add the scenery area or whatever. So maybe you want to get a little more fancy than that, because this is just going to show up as a boring rectangular image on the ground. But maybe you want to do some blending or water mask or something. So the way you do that is you have to create more images, basically. Maybe you want a winter variation on your image. So there's some ways to do that. Here I've edited some images. So this is a winter variation for my aerial imagery at Spokane. I'm probably going to end up redoing this since I, been realigning the taxiways, and this taxiway is no longer present, so I need to kind of erase all that. So I'm just probably going to end up redoing them. And then this right here, this defines how the image is blended into the onto the surface, basically. So black is fully transparent and white is opaque. So it's the edge of the image, whatever blend mask this belongs to, this image here. So it's going to, when we project this or look at this in the sim, if we use this blend mask, it's going to be transparent over here according to this image here. So the black is kind of like right there, so it's going to be transparent here. It's going to have a kind of a nice soft transition to the imagery, and this is going to be all the same. And so that's how you get a nice blended edge on your imagery if you want that. And then of course, how to put that into the configuration file. So that's not the right one. It's this one, I think. Or it might not be. I know I had it open and I lost it now. It's this one. All right. So keep in mind again that now since we created this photo in GIMP, there's no metadata associated with this. So when we put the configuration for this image into the file here, we need to make sure we add the coordinates, which again I said you add these to, or you get the data from Earth Explorer here in the metadata, or you can also use GDAL tools and use the command line, and it's like a GDAL info, and then you type the file name or something. But anyways, much easier just to get it from here if you're not familiar with that kind of thing. So you get the coordinates. I'm not reading the SDK what the X dimension and Y dimensions are specifically. I'm not entirely clear, but obviously I know at one point. But this is pretty clearly the upper left dimension for the Y, or it looks like the latitude, and this is the longitude, or the upper left X map. Anyways, so it's all in the SDK if you need to have any clarification on that. So this is kind of a little more complex configuration file, but not really. So what we have here is a multi-source file. So if we want more than one, if we want to compile more than one image into a single BGL, we had to have this source header, and then set the type as a multi-source, and then the number of sources that we have. So it's kind of like when you add paints into your aircraft CFG. It's kind of the same thing. And you just number them, like this. So source 1 is a TIFF file. This is just the, I know by name that this is just the imagery file. Alright, so this is kind of basically this part right here. And since, like I said, I didn't edit this in GIMP or anything, I didn't lose any of its metadata, it's all still in the file. I don't have to supply any coordinates, so I didn't. Pretty much, some of the same standard, it looks like some of the same standard settings here that I showed you before. And then we have the winter variation, which is just that image that I edited in GIMP, and that means I lost the metadata, so I need to tell Resample where we're located in the world. So I gave it its coordinates and whatever. And of course, since this is a winter image, we only want it to show up in certain times of the year, so you can use the variation to define what months of the year it shows up. And then we have the blend mask. So here's kind of the settings for that. I don't, I haven't looked at this stuff for a long time. Like I said, this is kind of just an impromptu thing. But you can kind of look at the settings here and get an idea of what to do. But basically, this is just to kind of keep some weird things from happening in that one. And then, of course, the coordinates, which should be the same as this one here, right? Yep. Alright, and then it just keeps continuing. Source 4, source 5, source 6 is the same pattern. It's an imagery, the winter variation, and the blend mask, and it keeps going. And then at the bottom, same thing. We have the destination header, and it just tells us the destination directory and all the kind of compression stuff, whatever, file type. So that's how you can create a nice background, say, for your airport, or if you're just creating photo scenery or whatever. But I think the biggest point to be made here is use QGIS to reproject your imagery. It works well, it's easy, and you don't have to worry about all the commands associated with command line using like GDAL or whatever. Although I honestly sometimes like using command line. It's just maybe not quite as easy to remember how to do things with it sometimes if you don't do it very often. Alright, so I think that's about all I wanted to cover. I just wanted to kind of do a kind of a quick review of things. Oh, I guess maybe one thing I did want to talk about is, I talked about setting up a background image in Gmax, but I've never done it formally in Blender for you guys. So there's kind of a couple ways you can go about it. Actually, my way of doing it is a little tedious, but basically what I do is if I have multiple tiles, I use empties. So I'll create an empty, and it's going to be an image. And I'm going to open it, or open the image, whatever image that's going to be. I have no idea. Like I say, this is just really spur of the moment kind of thing. But of course, it's going to be in the photoreal folder. Alright, so basically I did this, and then I added a new empty. In this case, I'm just going to duplicate this one just for the example purposes. And basically what I did is create empties for everything, and then took my time and lined them up very precisely. Now, that's kind of a pain. I'm not sure if vertex snap works with this. So if I turn on vertex snapping by pressing Shift Tab, set the vertex or something. I'm not sure if I can. Nope, I can't snap these together, I don't think. Maybe there's an increment or something. No. So you can't really snap empties, unfortunately. Anyway, so that's one way of getting your imagery into Blender, and then of course you line it up the same way as I did in the background image tutorial, making sure that your main runway is centered and aligned somehow, if that's how you want to go about it. The other way you can add images is, of course, just create planes like you do in Gmax and texture them with the image, basically, or map them with the image. So it's going to be the same thing that I've done in other videos. You create your plane or whatever, you unwrap it, and then Blender, you open up the UV image editor, find the image. Of course, it's already mapped nicely, and you have your image there. Now the thing about this though is that you have to have the texturing texture shading turned on to be able to see the image. So I don't really like doing that. That's why I like to use empties, so that I can see the image at all times, whether I'm in X-ray or solid shading or I'm in texture shading. So you notice those empties never changed. Another thing about empties is, despite their kind of, you know, their disadvantages with trying to align them and stuff, you can, adjust the transparency and stuff. So, you know, um, some things, advantages there. I thought there might be one other way. Well, of course, the other thing you could do, if you don't want to have to deal with tiles and stuff, you could use your, image editor, make a mosaic of all the tiles or what have you, and then just map it onto one plane or whatever. That's fine. It just said, like, if you're like me and you have only 8 gigabytes of memory, it just makes things slow. So run slow. So like even if you're working in Photoshop, it's about or in GIMP, it's impossible to work with a mosaic that's 25 pixels or 25,000 pixels or 30,000 pixels wide or whatever. So, anyways, so that's how you can get imagery into Blender. So it's not really different than Gmax, just kind of a different, feature set, I guess, in Blender. So I think now that's about covered. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to say about it, but I think that's about it. So hopefully that gives you kind of a good idea of what I use imagery for. I always felt like it was unclear in the past. I know a lot of people think, and it's not wrong to think this, but that you can use you can create the mosaic of the image tiles in Gmax or Blender and then export that as like a ground poly for your photoreal background, and that works fine. I just find it hard to, it just doesn't seem as easy to me, I guess. So I like to use aerial imagery or photoreal BGLs for my airport backgrounds. So I thought I'd kind of just give you guys a quick rundown as quickly as I could without any preparation beforehand. Alright, hope you find it helpful.